Hi, I am so thrilled to be a part of your voice and visibility movement. My name is Kandy Magnotti, and Shannon, I just have to thank you from the bottom of my heart for inviting me to share my journey with your followers and your listeners. I am just so behind what you are doing with voice and visibility, and it is truly my honor to share my story of how I've been resilient through life's challenges and went from being a healer to a realtor. So let's start the journey. I was born in Panama, a beautiful, beautiful country in Central America, and I came to the States when I was a baby. I went back to Panama for a short time, and then I returned to the United States permanently. My brother and I, along with my cousins, we are the first generation in my family to be raised here in the United States. And it's a really interesting experience. It's like having a foothold in two countries and cultures. I identify as both Panamanian and American, and I have the dual citizenship to prove it. I am aware that many Americans see me as African American, but I personally identify as Afro-Latina. My parents, especially my father, naturally encouraged me to embrace who I am and where I come from, and to accept that I'll never fit into a typical box because I do not have a typical background. People, except for other Afro-Latinos, are only really starting to be aware that we exist because we aren't really represented in American pop culture or Latino pop culture for that matter. And despite the non-recognition of our existence, I personally have enjoyed the flavor, the sabor, as we say, and the richness of my diverse background. And to that, I really want to thank my dad. As a child, I was very curious. I've always been very creative. I was a very creative child. I was also a tomboy, as they say. I grew up playing in the dirt and collecting seashells and turtles and worms. And you can see that's me hanging on my dad with my uncle, my cousins, and my little brother. I was also a natural caretaker to my brother, as you can see in the picture with me, and my mom as I'm holding my brother. My parents were very hardworking people focused on achieving the American dream, which was to provide their children with opportunities that they weren't necessarily afforded. My abuela, which is my grandmother on my mother's side, she moved to the States to help care for us while my mother worked. And my mother was an executive at a local bank. And my abuelo, who is my grandfather on my father's side, he's there holding my little brother. He only came to visit us. He had no desire to leave Panama. That's my dad's dad, obviously. And my father was a police officer for the town that I grew up in, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But, you know, he never wanted to leave Panama. And a lot of my family on my father's side, they never left. And they lived very comfortable and happy lives. I was blessed to be raised in an extremely culturally diverse community. Not all, but most of my friends were first generation children to be raised here in the United States. I grew up in a town called Union City. It's in Hudson County, New Jersey. It's 10 minutes away from New York City. And I had friends from all, and I do mean all cultural backgrounds, Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Colombian, as well as Italian, Irish, Jewish, Jamaican, Filipino, Hindu, and Guyanese descent. Then that's just to name a few. My friends and I, we often talk about how fortunate and unique that experience was. We were a melting pot and a mixed salad in that we were all experiencing the American culture, but we were still very, very connected to our ancestral roots. And I am so, so grateful for my humble working class beginnings. It's what allows me to feel very comfortable in all settings with all types of people. And at the same time, it's what drives me. It drives my work ethic and it drives my ambition. I started working when I was 14 years old. My first job was at a local movie theater, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I started working as a busgirl on a dinner cruise ship. And it, sailed all throughout the Hudson, and you got to see the Statue of Liberty on a regular basis. It was hard work physically, but it was so much fun. I have always been naturally and authentically drawn to music. And my mom will tell you that I sang before I could speak. One of the positions on the dinner cruise ship was a singing waiter or waitress. And while I was working as a busgirl, one of the managers overheard me singing while I was cleaning up a table, and she forced me to audition with the band in front of the staff. Whew, I sang The Rose by Bette Midler. I was so nervous. I will never forget that moment. And after I was done, everyone was in tears. I kind of looked up and I saw like everyone crying and like in with pride and joy. And I was promoted immediately. And I worked as a singing waitress through high school and most of college. It really, really shaped up a lot of who I am today, both personally and professionally. However, because my parents came to the States to offer us more opportunities in life, higher education was a mandatory goal. Even though I had this dream of pursuing the arts professionally, it wasn't even a question whether or not I was going to go to college. I was going. My dream at the time was to go to NYU because having, lived so close to New York City, I was always in the city and I loved the energy of New York. But I'll never forget when my mother told me I needed to apply to schools within New Jersey because NYU's tuition was just out of reach for our family. So I wound up attending Rutgers in New Brunswick, and you know what? It turns out I'm really glad that I did. I've always been a high achiever. So attending Rutgers, it offered me the opportunity to actually double major in communications and journalism, mass media. And I just threw in a minor course of study in anthropology just for fun because I enjoy learning about people. And I'm proud of my alma mater, and it too shaped me both personally and professionally. When I graduated from college, however, I decided I wanted to really, really focus on pursuing a career in the arts as a singer. I had been feeding my left brain with academics for so many years, but my creative right brain craved nourishment. So I moved to New York and I pursued music full time. And over the course of time and through a lot of hard work and a lot of trial and error and some really great fun experiences, I began to gain some traction and I obtained some really amazing opportunities, too many to list, but a couple of them that I'll highlight is this performance that I got to do in Las Vegas. As you can see there's a picture of me with John Voight, which is Angelina Jolie's father, who I had no idea who he was at the time, but it was a pretty big deal. And it was a really memorable experience. And then I also got the opportunity to co-star in a movie that was filmed in Shanghai, China. So I went out to China for a couple of weeks to film the movie, and then I went back after a year to help promote the movie. And I was able to tour 4 cities in China, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Beijing. And as you can see, those are some pictures from that tour experience. And it's just something I will always cherish. And I was really, really beginning to realize my dream. But things at home were starting to fall apart. My dear brother, Colby, who that's him and I in a limousine, actually, after my event in Las Vegas, he became very ill from a rare illness. And I began to struggle with focusing on pursuing my dream and being there for my family. Ultimately, I chose my brother and my family, and I left my creative life behind and forged ahead in a more traditional employment role so that I could be closer to home and live a more traditional, stable lifestyle. But on July 9th, 2005, the trajectory of my life changed forever. My brother, my one and only sibling, died from a very rare illness, and I frankly would never be the same. While I never lost the creative side of me who loved to sing and perform, that part of me, admittedly, did go dormant for a number of years, almost 10 years, while I grieved and tried to heal and adjust to my new existence without my brother. My left brain kicked into gear. And in a divine moment, it became very clear that a calling on my life was to become a grief counselor, a healer. As a new mom of twins, I decided that I was going to go back to school and obtain my master's degree in psychology as a marriage and family therapist that specialized in grief and loss and trauma and life transitions. And I became a certified grief recovery specialist while I completed my clinical training at Jewish Family and Children's Service in Sarasota. I also worked for that wonderful organization for a bit after I graduated. And then I opened a private practice, which allowed me the ability and the opportunity to hold individual, family, and group sessions. I also provided speaking engagements on grief and loss throughout our community. And I wrote about how to transform your life through loss. I also trained as an end-of-life doula, so I worked with families when their loved one was dying. I was also honored, as you can see in one of the pictures there, to officiate a homegoing ceremony, allowing me to help people adjust and find hope through the ultimate loss experience. I felt very called to do this work, and it is a professional accomplishment that I am proud of. I will always be proud of. I turned my pain into my power, and I helped hundreds of other people do the same. And from 2009 to 2018, that is what I dedicated my life to doing, is to helping others turn their pain into power. And gratefully, through that process, I healed so many parts of myself as well. And so through my healing process, I began to sing again. But this time I was singing for very different reasons than before my brother had died. This time I was singing for me. It was part of my healing process. And I used my voice to help others feel and to help them heal. And I was blessed to find an amazing musical partner. And together we created what we call Suncoast Sessions Presents. And they were events which highlighted the mission of some of the great nonprofit organizations in our Sarasota community. We curated the message and presented it through song, and each event left the audience moved, awakened, and in many ways released from the intangible pain they were carrying. There was never a dry eye in the house, and that's how I really became aware of the power of music and its ability to heal. And I loved my work as a therapist. I mean, I really did. However, there's nothing I love more than being a mom. That's my picture with me and my two little uh, nuggets that I call the loves of my life. Mom is my most favorite title of all. And I have twin daughters, and part of why I was so determined to heal myself was because I have these two amazing daughters that God has blessed me with to raise. And they need and deserve a mom who can love them wholeheartedly, not brokenheartedly. So recently, one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make was leaving my marriage of 18 years, a 23-year relationship, but married for 18 years. It was the final area of my life that I hadn't been able to reconcile and feel at peace with, no matter how hard I tried to make it work. So in 2018, my marriage and the life that I had created and the life that I had known for almost a quarter of a century ended. But even though the life I knew came to an end, the life that was truly meant for me was only beginning. I was always someone with a very strong faith. However, being raised Catholic and Episcopalian, being raised in that religion, I never felt a direct connection to God except when I sang. It always felt like there were these layers between me and God, and it never felt right. But it was all that I knew until I hit my rock bottom emotionally. I promise you, God does his best work within you when you are at your worst. I know this firsthand. As long as you have faith, even if it's the size of a mustard seed, that's all you need. The summer of 2018 was when I know the Holy Spirit began to make his presence undeniably known in my life. I was that lost sheep. I was the one he left the 99 for to save. I became infused with a strength not of my own making that allowed me to walk into the unknown of my new life, led by faith, not by fear. Oh, don't get me wrong, I was scared. I was, but my faith was so much stronger. And on November 4th, 2018, that was the day, and you'll see in the pictures, that was the day I gave my life to Christ. And I have not looked back since. I have stepped into a boldness of declaring my knowing of who Christ is and sharing how he saved me from a life filled with emotional pain and struggle. Now, I do not identify as an evangelical Christian because that term to me is just way too political and too divisive. And words really do matter. No, I identify and I say I am a child of God in direct relationship with God, who studies the Bible and is worthy of a life of peace and freedom in him. And that is what I have now. I am more connected to Christ. And in fact, that Christianity's foundation is in Judaism, and how the two are in fact so deeply connected. It now brings such a deeper meaning and appreciation for the time that I spent working at Jewish Family and Children's Service, where I was able to experience celebrating Jewish traditions on a regular basis. What I now know is this: when you know whose you are, everything, and I do mean everything, changes. I now use the gift that God has entrusted me with to sing his praises and to help people heal through him. I have no desire to convince anyone of my truth. That's not why I'm sharing my journey or my story. It's not to convince. My only desire is to share my life experience so that if and when that day comes for you, and I pray that it does, you'll know it's real. I am proud to be part of an amazing worship team that offers healing in a way that only music can. This is where I started my comeback. And I will spend no more time asking God why doors have closed, because I am too busy and I will be too busy thanking Him for the doors that have opened and are about to open. And so it's never too late to start again. I am thrilled, beyond thrilled, to be looking forward to my future and all the doors that are opening for me. After working for 20 years in the healthcare and wellness industry, with the last few years working as I shared, a grief and life transition counselor, and I also worked in residential sales and for senior living, what I also know for sure is this: where and how you live is the key to health, longevity, and wellness, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I am proud to now bring my years of experience and expertise in contract negotiations, sales, marketing, and ultimately guiding people through the most challenging parts of their lives, to my current clients seeking real estate and relocation services to this beautiful Suncoast area of Florida. This place brought me back to life, and I want so much for others to experience it. I still pinch myself that I get to call this place home. The Florida Suncoast provides me, and it provides so many more people, so much more than just a place to live. It provides a lifestyle. It's a place full of bright sunshine and salty air and palm trees and birds and big white clouds and soft sandy beaches. And my goal is to help others find the joy and the happiness that I have found here too. At this stage of life, I choose to do it as a realtor. Where you live is so much more than a dwelling space. I have learned this both personally and professionally over the years. It's where the memories are made. It's where life happens. And it's everything in between. And if you can dream it, I will help you achieve it. When I look back now, it's only to see how far I've come. I am resilient, and so are you. So many of you are, if you just take the moment to look back and see all that you've accomplished, all that you've been through. I challenge you to look back at your life, maybe even draw out a timeline of all the things you've experienced, both positive and I won't say negative, I'll say challenging. I bet you'd be surprised how resilient you actually are. I am well aware that I haven't been able to get where I am on my own. It's critical. It is so critical who you surround yourself with and how you choose to spend your time. Things that uplift me and bring me peace are taking trips by myself to release and refuel. Sedona is my go-to place for that. You'll see that in the picture. I also love to spend time at the beach. It's my most natural place to exhale and regularly connect with, myself and God. I spend time in church connecting with other women who are on the same biblical and spiritual path. I also spend time with girlfriends that I have come to know and love and trust over the years, who I see as sisters of the heart on this journey through life. I also lean on my mentors that I was able to find while I worked at Jewish Family and Children's Service. And you can see them in the picture there with me and my mom. I love those women dearly. I love to spend time cuddling with my sweet fur baby, who has been my ride or die for the past 7 years and has seen me at my worst and knew just how to love me through it. I am also so very grateful for my mother, who taught me how to mother and love my daughters unconditionally and wholeheartedly. And my wish for all women who ever hear this is to know your worth Know your strength, know your abilities. And it's okay to put yourself and your needs and your desires and your dreams on the list. Selflessness is a strength, but it can become your greatest weakness when you give others permission to exploit your kindness. I learned that the hard way, but it's the lesson that has strengthened me the most. And always remember, you are never meant to play the supporting role in your own life. Be the bright star you were uniquely designed by God to be. And it's not how many times you get knocked down that counts. It is how many times you decide to get up. That's resilience. And that's in me. And I promise that's in you too.
Good evening, and thank you to our Voice and Visibility listeners for tuning in with us tonight. I am so thrilled to introduce you to a Sarasota superstar. She is soulful, brilliant, beautiful, and really courageously sharing her inspirational journey with us. And it's one that touches me very deeply. Kandy Magnotti, thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh my goodness, Shannon, thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me. I'm so honored and thrilled to be part of your voice and visibility movement, your tribe of women that are all about empowering other women. So it's my honor.
Well, thank you. And we're thrilled to have you in the tribe. And you guys have heard Kandy's story, and it really does epitomize the mission of Voice and Visibility, which we set out to empower women, expand networks and opportunities, and elevate the voices of diverse women. And so we've grown over the last 2 years to several thousand women through our events and our online community. And tonight, I really am just privileged to allow our listeners to get to know you a little bit more. So I wanted to, just begin and frame where we are in this moment in time. It's the summer of 2020. You and I were just chatting. We're both moms. And yep. This has been a really complicated time for all of us, right?
Without a
we're enduring the COVID pandemic. We are, all of us, struggling with professional choices and personal and parenting choices. We've also been witness to some of the most significant racial tension and divisiveness that you and I were saying in our lifetime we've witnessed. And part of our mission is to galvanize the collective spirit of women who are solutionists, who are, like you, able to bring gifts and assets in all different sectors to this moment in time. So I want to begin, Kandy. I want to help our listeners get to know you and get to know your background. And I really want to talk first about diversity. I want to talk about the truth that, the new majority in America is trending towards brown. It's Black, it's multiracial, it's Hispanic. In fact, we know that California and Florida and New Jersey are among the most diverse states in America. And they are the new majority. So whites are the minority in those states. Florida hasn't quite flipped over the 50%, but it's on trend to. Mm-hmm. You were raised in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And in your talk, you said it was really an authentic melting pot. Tell us more about your childhood. What was it like growing up in New Jersey?
Oh, I look back at that time as such a gift. I didn't realize until later on, once I started undergraduate college at Rutgers, what a unique experience that was. I thought everybody lived like that, right?
Right.
But no, that wasn't the case. So, Union City was known for, we teasingly called it Little Havana. It was very diverse in varying different Hispanic cultures, but very, very Cuban focused. So I kind of say I'm a little Cuban by osmosis.
Yeah.
living in the area. But no doubt, I mean, I look back at that time, and I mean, every one of my friends were from different regions of the world. But what was the thread that kind of unified us was we were all, for the most part, first generation children being raised in the United States. So whether they were from, you know, Cuba or Italy or Ireland or Israel or wherever they were from, we were all first generation. So I say we were a melting pot, but we were also a mixed salad in that we were able to keep our own identity. You know, the culture that I came from, my friends embraced it. The cultures that they came from, I embraced. And, you know, it was, I won't say it was utopia. It wasn't. We had our challenges. We were a working class kind of community. But one thing that really, really kept us connected and together is that we were all there to achieve something. Our parents brought us to the United States so that we could work hard, achieve the American dream, go to school, do your best. Like there was, that was the expectation, and we didn't even question it. Nobody questioned it.
Well, I just think it's so fascinating, this thread with the immigrant kind of vision of the American dream. Education has always been such a driver. I know for my husband, who's Jamaican American, education above all else, my mother-in-law always says, right? And so tell us a little bit more about your Panamanian roots. You know, I love how you say I'm a proud Afro-Latina. Was there a big Panamanian community there in New Jersey? And did you speak Spanish in the home? Tell us what was it like in your childhood home?
Yes, yes. Well, I'm so glad I get to speak about this because no, there weren't that many Panamanians in.
Really?
I was the anomaly. I actually have met more Panamanians having lived in Sarasota for the last 10 years than I did living up in New Jersey. I mean, obviously I had my family, but
Sure.
and we spoke, Spanish was spoken in the home, but my parents didn't speak directly to me in Spanish, or me and my brother. They would kind of speak to each other in Spanish as a way to like talk so that me and my brother wouldn't understand, but then eventually we started understanding. And we were constantly surrounded by Latin culture. So anytime I went to a friend's house, their parents often spoke Spanish. So it was just always there. I don't speak it so beautifully and fluently the way my parents do, which is, you know, one of their biggest regrets. But I understand it because it's just in my DNA. It's just such a comfortable sound for me to hear Spanish speaking. So sometimes I would sing in Spanish. I actually feel the music a little differently when I do sing in Spanish. So yeah, I mean, it was just such an amazing experience. My father used to travel back to Panama several times throughout the year. My abuela and abuelo would come and visit. You know, at some points, my younger brother actually went back with my dad. So we were being raised in America, but we were still very, very connected to our Panamanian roots.
And I love that you're saying, you know, and this is part of where I see these new diverse states, and I see the future kind of like you described in New Jersey, which is this constellation of networks and friends and probably classmates and teachers, all that can and should be proud of their roots.
Oh, yes.
And there are similarities, but there's also very unique differences in each other's backstory. And then when you arrive at school or you're in your neighborhood, I love that you said this common educational pursuit was really important in your family. Tell us more. I mean, were they super strict? Were they like, you need to get straight A's? Or how did it play out? Because I think for many parents these days, we all want our kids to achieve academically, but there's something in the immigrant experience. They're typically very successful at driving education for their children.
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. And it makes me sort of ponder on how that came about from my family and for my friends in the community. I have to say, I don't think it was something that was, it wasn't an oppressive feeling, like you have to go to school or else. It was just an understanding. It was an expectation. It was, we also wanted to make our parents proud. And so we knew that that was a way to do that. You know, that's one of the things I will say is we have a lot of respect. We, as children of immigrants, we are just fused with a level of respect for our parents that I don't exactly see today. I hate to say that, but there is a difference.
I think it's the truth, Kandy. I mean, honestly, and you and I were talking before the segment started about my real interest in, white identity and looking at the intersection of class. And I think it's truthful. I think something that privileged, particularly privileged white families can and should learn from the immigrant experience is, wow, there's something beautiful in children understanding there are hardships in a parent's journey.
Yep.
And it doesn't always have to be, not all immigrants come here and struggle financially or with linguistics, but there is something there. And I think somehow dominant culture has like this authoritarian, parents are untouchable. I think it's complicated for kids to navigate. Where's the humanity? Where is there a pain point? I didn't know, dad got laid off from the job. And I try to, back in my therapeutic days, say, be real, be human. That is there's something in, and also in this collectivist culture that we see in the immigrant community that sometimes in the Euro culture is a little more me-centric. And I think those kids miss out. So I see it as not a judgment, it's just an observation and a commonality when I interview and speak with folks who have kind of that immigrant background, the love of their family.
Yeah, it's so critical. And there's obviously something that worked in the mix of us living in that community at that point in time as well, because pretty much every single one of my friends has gone on to become very successful. And even if they weren't direct friends of myself, just people from that community, Robert Menendez, our senator, he lived around the block from me, and his wife was my his wife at the time was my health ed teacher. I mean, I walked past Bob Menendez's home on a daily basis. Esther Salas, I don't know if you know her. She's a district judge who was appointed by Barack Obama. She went to the same grammar school that I went to. There's a really successful DJ named Eric Murillo who lived 2 blocks away and went to the same high school. I mean, and his music has been featured in Shrek, and so we were a community that, like I said, working class, but the expectation was that we were going to do whatever it took to make our parents proud. And part of how we did that was staying in line and being successful in whatever way that looks. I mean, some of them are school psychologists, veterinarians, ophthalmologists, attorneys. I mean, everyone has, for the most part, has become some sort of professional success.
Well, it's fascinating because, as you're saying, that spirit of like accomplishment and education and pride, it's so inspirational. And I think I want to transition a little bit now and talk a bit more about your family. And you were very courageous and honest about your heartbreak, Kandy, of losing your brother. And I'm so sorry that you had to endure that. And it sounds to us like that loss of your brother, Colby, kind of started a journey for you looking into areas of grief and healing. And tell us how that journey healed you, Kandy, and how did you evolve through so much pain?
Yeah, I ask myself that question sometimes too. I definitely know for sure there's no way I could not have got through that without my faith, and my faith deepened. And you saw that in the talk that I did prior to this interview. But another part of it is my family. I realized that my family is not huge. You know, it's really just, it's me, my biological family. It's me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. That was the core unit, right? And when a loss like that happens, it highlights the cracks in the foundation of a family. And you can either be torn apart or brought together. And by the grace of God, somehow that brought us even closer together. So, you know, my family was not perfect. We had a lot of struggles that we went through as a family unit. But through my brother's death and the way that we chose to deal with it and accept it, it brought us all closer together and then allowed us each to start on our healing journey. So I just think my brother Colby was an angel that was sent to us, and we're actually born on the same day.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're very specially connected, and you know, he still lives in our hearts and our minds and our souls today. My daughters know him. I talk about him with them, and they know that, you know, their Uncle Colby is an angel that watches over them. So, you know, it was a tragedy, but it changed the trajectory of my life. And I know I did what I did as a therapist in the way that I did it and as successfully as I did it because of that experience.
Well, I want to speak to that because I just feel compelled to share with our listeners. You know, Kandy and I collaborated on a trauma case locally, a child who had very traumatically lost his father to a homicide. And when Kandy came in to work with this young grieving child, the angel energy was in the room. I mean, he kept saying, "When is Miss Kandy coming back?" And you would do intensive grief work. And you know, Kandy, I just think you're special because I think when you're able to take that pain and channel it into a career for over a decade of serving others that are grieving children, the work that you and I collaborated on was through the educational work I did at Visible Men Academy, the school that Neil and I started. And I was always so concerned, Kandy, and I know you were too, with the volume of trauma that our students had experienced. And I want to know, in your decade of doing grief work, how you experienced trauma, particularly in the Black and Brown community. I felt frustrated. I felt there weren't resources. I felt that behavioral challenges that students of color were manifesting in the educational setting were directly linked to their trauma.
Yes.
But there was no way, and we hired social workers. I started a social work intern program, but I was like, every single one of the students in this building has some trauma. So we're going to invest in mental health. And at the time, it was really unheard of when I was saying to my founding team, no, we need way more than just me. We need multiple collaborators like Kandy. We need to really look at this mental health pathway. We were unique, and it's still a challenge for them to get all that funded. What's your experience of how we value or don't value trauma in the Black and Brown experience?
Oh my gosh. I mean, listen, I could go on and on about that. I'm so glad you asked me that question. I won't go on and on, but I will share that I also shared the frustration because I was on the front line, working in all sorts of communities, dealing with trauma. And what I discovered that was the frustrating part is that when you're taught to become a therapist, a counselor, working with people in trauma, is one of the first things is you are to meet your client where they're at. You know this, right? Meet them where they're at. And where they're at, you cannot separate their culture from where they're at. And what I saw was too much of this savior mentality.
Yes.
And we don't want to be saved.
Thank you.
We don't.
It's for the white people too. Like honestly, for white therapists, that the savior complex has to go.
It just
there's gotta go. It's gotta go.
We don't want to be saved. We don't need to be saved. you know, and that savior mentality, all that does is it continues to enforce the stigmatized views that Black and brown communities have about mental health. It's already shameful and weak to want or need mental health counseling, right? You couple that with, well, we're going to come in and save you. You're just enforcing the weakened viewpoint. And I will tell you this. I did my clinical training at Jewish Family and Children's Service. I worked there for a good time after. And I worked in a particular program where we counseled men who had been incarcerated and were they were to reunify with society, with their children. And part of what they had to do was come to get counseling. I will say that 95% of the people who I worked with were white males. Okay?
Yes.
And the narrative that was being displayed at many of our meetings, not within the organization, but outside within the community, was this savior narrative. And I was like, wait a second, I'm sitting in the room with these people. And if I have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 max men who are of Hispanic or Black descent, that's a lot. And that's not because it was Jewish Family and Children's Service. It served all, okay? But it just speaks to who was actually coming in for service, who was actually receiving the service, and the disparity in how that was being presented to the community.
Okay, so what you just said is so critical, Kandy, because in all my years as a social worker, I crediting my graduate school at Smith, we did a lot of clinical looking at race and grief. And looking at the different ways folks grieve. And what you're just describing, there were 2 thoughts that come to mind. Number one, there aren't enough grief counselors of color that have the cultural competency to say, I think you probably would agree with me that the Panamanian culture is going to grieve differently than a Greenwich, Connecticut, white Anglo culture. And so when we have a mental health system that is a little bit too entrenched in the white Euro way, the right way to grieve, that's problem number 1. And then problem number 2 that you just highlighted was white people need to start looking at white people's issues, because the white men you're describing that are really highly represented in our state of Florida in the prison and addiction and criminal justice system, there's a lot of work to be done there. And it's not savior work, to your point. None of addiction work, grief work, and mental health is about saving. You can't. It's about the dignity of someone's own path and how.
I'm sorry to interrupt because I don't want to thought, but it's the difference between coming from a savior perspective versus a servant perspective.
Oh, I love that. Okay. I love that.
Because our only savior, whatever your religious belief is for me, it's God. That's who the savior is.
Yes.
My job is to serve. And so when you come from a place of serving, then you are more able to meet people of all different backgrounds where they're at.
And it's an equal playing field. And part of what I love, and again, for those young listeners that might be looking at mental health or going into these pathways, it's critical to remember what Kandy said. You start where a client is. You are there to serve. You are there, and we talked about this before the segment, Kandy, to translate potentially with a skill set that you have, what's in their soul, in their broken heart, in their community, and how to help them get back on their feet, how to mend themselves. And, you know, gosh, I could go on forever with Kandy, and I have a little reveal that you're going to be hearing more from Kandy in multiple ways. But to transition us from this notion of grief and voice and dignity, you said in the segment that when you sang, you stopped singing for a while as you were grieving, and then you found your voice again. And tell us more about your healing through your your voice, and you're performing, which you all are going to get a sneak peek of one of Kandy's beautiful songs at the end of this segment. So listen to the end. But talk to us about what song and singing brings to your world.
Oh my gosh, it's literally everything. I can't imagine existing in this life without having that ability. It's a gift. The way that I see it, it's a gift that God has bestowed upon me that I am to honor and respect and use, for his glory. It's for me, it's how I connect. For some people, that where they are able to tune out and tune in, some people do it through running or through cooking or through painting or, travel. It's whatever, whenever your soul comes alive in that way, that's your gift. That's how you connect to your higher power. And that's sort of how I used to work a lot with clients. I didn't specifically talk about my interpretation of religion because that would not be meeting people where they're at.
Sure.
I knew it so strongly for me that I knew that if I could help my client find that in them, then they would be able to heal. They'd be able to heal themselves because I would just be serving and then leading them to their savior, whoever that may be.
Kandy, it's so beautiful. I love that. And again, I want to share with our listeners, I heard you sing several years ago in Sarasota at the Florida Studio Theater. And spoiler alert, the song you sang was Blackbird. And I saved it on my iPhone. And I want to share with you that I listened to that song probably 1,000 times. And the gift of your voice and your soul, because it's so evident, you guys are going to hear at the end, it was so beautiful and I needed it. And so music as a healing gift for your journey and also what it brings to others is so lovely. So just thank you for your voice.
Thank you. I have such a hard time, and this is something that I'm learning to do too, is like receiving that. But I always give the glory back to God because I don't own any of that. I wasn't trained to do this. I didn't ever take a singing lesson. So when I say I know that it's a gift, I know that it's a gift and I honor it.
You do honor it. It's clear how beautifully you honor it. And, my final question, which I'm excited for our younger listeners to get to know Kandy, because you epitomize to me this multifaceted woman, like clearly soulful, and through your own journey have found and reclaimed your voice. Now at this stage in your life, you are entering into the business sector. And you and I have chatted, after both of our decades of service, right? And that part of us will always be there. I know you're still involved in service in different ways, and so am I. But the business sector is a whole new playground. I personally love it. I find, I'm older than you, but I find at this stage in my life, it's incredibly empowering. And I think I was a tad underexposed to the power that can come as a woman when we talk about money and value. And investments. And so talk to us about your journey into real estate and having, I'm sure, a portfolio of homes of this beautiful Sarasota community that we live in. But how is this world, how do you like it?
First of all, I love it. I am a natural entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I love the entrepreneurial world. I've always had that kind of business entrepreneur spirit. It's just not something that was always, it's not something that my parents really, it wasn't their world, and it wasn't that they said, yes, go be an entrepreneur.
Go start a business.
That wasn't how I grew up, but it's something that was natural to me. And frankly, when I was in private practice, I was also a business owner.
That's true. You ran your own.
So I was doing a lot of the business work, the entrepreneurial work, as a grief counselor as well. So it's actually a natural transition. And what I love so much about real estate is sort of bringing me back full circle, because before I got into healthcare, I was working in the real estate investment, hotel investment world, a conference organizer.
Okay.
9/11 happened, and I made a decision what job is going to give me security, and I felt healthcare was the way to go. So that's how I got healthcare. But so this feels very full circle, and I love real estate. It just brings me such joy because your home it's just more than a house.
Yes.
It's where all your memories are made. It's where the good and the bad happen. It's where life happens. And I love, I mean, can you tell? I love the Suncoast.
Well, I love it. I mean, you guys have to follow Kandy's social because I mean, obviously she's gorgeous and you'll see her pictures of the beach, and I think no one could sell the beauty of the Suncoast more than you. And I think really what's so authentic is you love the lifestyle. And so I imagine when you couple this lifestyle opportunity we have here in Sarasota with helping folks find their dream home, that it's incredibly rewarding and gratifying.
Oh, it so is. It so is. And it's there's still ways that I will be helping and be therapeutic in the process. I like to work with women who are going through a divorce. I like to work with families who have to downsize because their elderly parent has to be admitted to an assisted living facility. I love working with veterans because they are the backbone of our country. I also like working with families who are expanding because they're having more kids, and they are home. So it's such a natural transition to go from healer to realtor. It may seem like
I love it.
But
it makes perfect sense. And by the way, you all would be lucky to get, if you are considering relocating down here, or like Kandy said, going through a life transition, we're looking at housing options is just something that you really need to lean into. I'm like unapologetic sales pitch. Kandy should be your woman because I just think there's an authenticity to how much you love people and how much you get people and the journey, as you and I have talked about, of moving and new life transitions, new chapters. I think you would honor that. And I'm excited to see you blossom in this new role. I really am. And so I want to thank our listeners. Most importantly, Kandy, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for all that you bring to your journey, to the community, to your family, to your culture. You're just a beautiful, beautiful soul. And we're so thrilled to have you in our Voice and Visibility community.
My honor. I thank you so much. And I can't leave without saying that I ditto, it's back at you, because we need women like you to be able to step up and have these kinds of conversations that aren't always easy, but they're necessary. And there's ways that they can be had where we can actually come together. I was saying before that you're kind of a translator. You're able to translate what it is we may not want to hear, but we do need to hear in a way that's palatable and digestible and can actually offer change. So
I thank you. I think we operate from the same space of, looking up to say, what am I called to do? And I'm just grateful to be working with you. And I'm, again, so thankful for our listeners. And I want to invite you to stick around and hear this exclusive performance, Kandy's song, Blackbird, the Beatles song, with your rendition, which will elevate people's spirits. And we look forward to more collaboration. So thank you, Kandy. Thank you to my team, to Ashley and Karina, so hardworking. And thank you to everybody. And we'll see you soon. Take care.
this moment to arise.